What is up, my friend? Welcome to episode 132 of the Anthony John Amos podcast. Today, I'm bringing you on a guest to talk about how to increase your online visibility. Now, this episode, it felt like this vulnerable conversation that was just kind of had around like a really good cup of coffee. And today's guest, she really opens up to share some of the personal challenges that she faced and leaving her corporate job to start and establish her successful business. So if you're at a place where you're thinking about making the jump to go into entrepreneurship full time, or you just want some inspiration to stay the course, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Anthony John Amos podcast, the one and only podcast designed to help you become unstoppable in life and business. My name is Anthony John Amos. My friends call me AJ, and my goal with this podcast is to help you remember who you truly are so you can maintain your center in the chaos, embody your potential, and unlock freedom in your life and business. That being said, let's get into today's show.
All right, welcome back. Today's guest is Kenzie Mackus. She helps coaches and consultants and service-based business entrepreneurs build their influence, impact, and income by maximizing their visibility online so they can really get known as an expert in their industry and stand out in the noise and attract high-quality clients. She's been featured on CBS, Fox, NBC, Yahoo Finance. She just has an amazing spirit about her. And now before I bring her on, I want to let you know about my brand new book called Unstoppable Beacon. I'm really excited about this book because it really captures my life's work up to this point. And it'll really help you know how to maintain your center in the chaos, embody your potential, and unlock freedom in your life and business. And you can get the book right now. You can just go over to Amazon, look at Unstoppable Beacon, or you can go to unstoppablebeaconbook.com. I think that takes you over to Amazon as well. And plus, when you get the book, there's some bonus trainings that I have as a surprise for you. And it's just my way of saying thank you, my way to give back to you when you purchase the book. So again, just go to Amazon. You can get the book. Kindle book is coming out. So just go to unstoppablebeacon.com, unstoppablebeaconbook.com. That's what it is, unstoppablebeaconbook.com to get that book today. So with that being said, let's bring Kenzie onto the show. Kenzie, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. I'm excited to have you here. You mentioned kind of in our little pre-chat that last year, 2020, was your first year to start a business solo, leaving your corporate career. That's kind of really good timing just to leave your business in 2020. How'd that go?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's so funny because I keep saying I just walked away from my corporate career in January of 2020 and went all in on entrepreneurship. And it feels like ages ago. But it's sort of interesting because it's I never really found it was this weird transition from shedding my old identity as a corporate professional and then, grooming myself for who I really needed to step into as an entrepreneur. But then the layers of having all my kids home, and not really finding a routine because we're trying to be teachers and I'm trying to find this new rhythm with my schedule. And so it was kind of weird and funny and messy and all the things. But that's kind of all I knew. And so, now that, kids are back in school and we're getting a little bit more established, I feel like I'm almost restarting again, finding a new rhythm, a new pattern. So it's kind of messy, but it's all good.
Awesome. How was it juggling everything mom, teacher, entrepreneurship, wife? It's a lot of balls to be juggling.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's a loaded question. I think it's funny. I can say it was easy on in the regard that I was able to have options, right? When I was in corporate, I didn't have many options. So it was I answered to people, I had a schedule, right? But as an entrepreneur, I was able to create more options and more space for myself. So it was easy in that regard that I had the ability to make decisions around what I wanted my life to look like and how I wanted to show up. But then it was hard in the sense that, again, I was trying to build this business, fumbling my way through entrepreneurship while also being fully present for my husband and kids. And I just had to really just allow myself to be in it, all in it, whatever moment I was in. It was moment to moment. So when I had the chance to work, I was like all in. When I was, helping my kids with schoolwork, I was all in. I tried to really get rid of ideas or what I should be doing. And just, just allow myself to be messy in the moment and lean in.
Was it like multitasking, or was it more like, I don't know, super present to the task at hand? Because there is a difference between the two.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm a terrible multitasker. Like
Well,
I'm a
science has
classic,
shown
like,
that we all are, by the way.
yes. I know it's sort of like in corporate, it's like dubbed, it's like a badge of honor
Yeah.
if you claim to be a great multitasker. But like you said, everybody's actually a terrible multitasker. And I'm like terribly, my brain is like ADHD. So I'm very easily distracted. So I would say it was more, I had to get really good at like just allowing myself, it was like step by step. But again, to your point, when I was in the task, I had to allow my mind to be there. It's hard because like my mind is going so fast as a mom, as a business owner. But it was like constantly pulling it back to this moment, right? Like this moment, here we are. This is what we're doing right now.
How did you do that? Because I know like oftentimes we hemorrhage a lot of energy and plugging into a task, plugging out of a task, plugging into a task, plugging out of a task.
Mhm.
Like subconsciously, that's actually an energy drain for a lot of people. And a lot of people don't know that. So how did you, number one, maintain energy and like be disciplined enough to like plug in, plug out, plug in, plug out, but stay
Yeah.
motivated the entire time?
So I would say I'm still practicing. I'm still trying to become a master at that. But a couple like little things that help is I'm really present to my thoughts. And so while I'm working on a task, I'm like very aware of where my brain is. And so again, I'm like making the intention of like telling my brain to come back. If I have a hard time getting it to come back, then I'll write. I like keep a notepad by me and I'll just write out whatever is distracting me, like whatever thought might be distracting me. It could be a thing or a task that keeps coming up, but a lot of times it's just a bad thought that I'm having that's not really serving me. And so I have to like pattern interrupt my mind, almost like stop thinking that. And if I need to do a quick reframe, I can do that. Sometimes if I'm getting stuck in bad thoughts like that are distracting me from doing the thing that I need to do, I'll kind of like rework the model. So, it's coming up as a feeling. Why am I feeling this way? What are the thoughts that are creating that? And I'll go deeper with myself to figure out like what these are the thoughts that are occurring, right? If I'm not super present to them or aware of them, and help myself reframe that thought. So that's like mentally, that's what it's like constantly like coming to the moment. If I'm finding that again my brain is more cluttered, I have tasks, I have to-dos, but I have to tell myself like I will figure it out. Like I always get the things done that I need to get done. I will figure it out. And so I really learn to release the pressure of like this hustly like task completion. I don't know if that makes
Yeah,
any
totally.
sense. And
Absolutely.
I just kind of like flow. But again, I'm not perfect at it. And I can't tell you that that's how I am all the time
Of
either.
course. Of course. Now, were you that way in corporate or were you different?
No, I was such a different person in corporate. I really was it was like the hustle and grind. Again, it was like, um, it was like a badge of honor if you were hustling.
Yeah.
And if you were doing all the things at once. My trade so I got my master's in business administration, and then I got my credentials in project management. And so I would manage these large scale projects, which would require me to have oversight of several different things at one time. And like it was like when they gave me more work or more projects, it was like blessed upon me. Like I am gifting you this thing, right? We already know you have a full plate, but like you get the privilege to do these things. And I totally was like caught up in that. And I would take my, work home. I would like try to work while, kids were eating, and after they went to bed, I would work. And, my marriage was struggling because like I paid no attention to my husband. It was like, I am doing all the things, right? But at the time I felt like that was what I was supposed to do. Like, I need to be successful in my career, right? And then everything will be fine. Unfortunately, but fortunately I learned that that's not the case.
So how did you make that identity transition? I mean, identity transitions are I believe, some of the hardest jumps that we make in this game of being a human. How did you make that transition?
Yeah, it's funny. If you ask me in a year, I'll probably have a better answer because I still feel like I'm in that transition. But I had, first of all, I knew that I had this like really big, I don't know, like awakening. I don't know if you want to call it that, but after we had our third baby, I went on maternity leave, and
What year
mind you,
was this?
What was that?
What year was that?
So that would have been 2018.
Awesome.
And so this was my third maternity leave, and it felt so different. It was like, I never opened my computer. I told my people, like, do not call me. I will not be working on maternity leave. And also I was just like in the moment with my baby, and like my kids were in their early grades at the time. So I would take them to school and I would pick them up. And I just remember being like, this is what I've been missing. And so after maternity leave was up and I had to go back to work, it was like, that was like the darkest period of my life, I would say, because I really didn't think I had options at the time. My husband had just transitioned out of the military and he had started his business. And so I was the primary breadwinner at the time. And so financially, it didn't make sense for me to do anything different. And so I just remember feeling so stuck and realizing that like everything that I had built up until that point was not what I wanted anymore. So that also hurt and felt frustrating. But I started to realize that like the answers to just who I was as a mom, as a wife, as a person was not about the external things, right? Like like I had a bazillion credentials behind my name. And I thought that was so cool. Like I was like, look at how many credentials I have, right? And I used that as external validation that I was worthy and that I was valuable. But I had that realization that like I didn't give a shit about any of those things. And all I wanted was to really learn who I was, not who I thought I needed to be. And also like uncover more of that so I could like show up more powerfully for the people in my life. And it was when I had that shift, I started thinking about what would this look like if I were successful, if I had all the answers within me, if it didn't matter what external circumstances were, and just started to kind of go on this path of self-discovery. And it was James Wedmore or Jim Fortin who teaches this concept of be, do, have. And it was like, that's when it clicked. When I first heard this concept of like, everybody's living from the the outside in, right? Which is exactly where I was in my corporate career. And and shift that and thinking about what if you live from the inside out. And I just started embodying that more, like focusing less on external, more on internal. What did I want to feel and think, and how did I want to behave? And I let that kind of lead me, which then, landed me to where I am now. But I'm still, I feel like shifting. I still, when you have identity, like when you shift identities, I don't know if that's really the right term, but there's a lot of resistance that comes up, I think, because you're like you're detaching from an old version of yourself and you're being called to step into a bigger version of yourself, which can be really uncomfortable, really scary, really unknown. And so it's the balance of like being okay with that discomfort and just allowing yourself to be in it, even though it can kind of feel uncomfortable. And so I had a big period of that last year. And again, I was just like, I got really good at being uncomfortable, but I think I'm still like, even as I level up as an entrepreneur, I'm like, it's still in that really like identity shaping period.
Do you believe you're at a place where you're still resisting the resistance, or are you like in the resistance and have fully accepted it for what it is?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was just having this conversation earlier today because I think I've experienced more resistance in this last month than I think I did the entire year last year. And I know exactly what it is. So I can't say that I'm resisting it, but I do think parts of me are wondering like, yeah, like, is this is it? Like, this is me, shaping a bigger version of myself. But also, again, it's so freaking uncomfortable. And like, so it could be a little bit of both.
Yeah. What is, if you want to share, what's your biggest fear?
I think so. Oh, this is such a good question because it's definitely fear of failure. But what's interesting is I didn't have any of that last year. Like it was just like in last year being 2020, my first year of business, it was like I got so good at just like just taking aligned action, just like putting myself out there and just believing. It was just like this big ball of belief. I don't know where it really came from. And this yeah this time, so I don't know if it's the new year, I don't know, a new goal. I have a really big goal this year, so it could be that. And then the questioning of my brain, was last year just a lucky year, that that imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And so if I were to, at the end of the day, I think it is, yeah, like what if I don't succeed? What if I was just lucky last year?
Like, I know for me, one of my biggest fears for a long time was my wife divorcing me and another dude raising my daughter.
Oh, wow.
So wrapped up into that, I could have said, oh yeah, it's the fear of failure. But the real thing, if I got really fucking honest, it was my wife's going to fucking leave me and another dude's going to raise my daughter. Like that fear fucking terrified me. And everything I did was in response to that fear. Now, in the game of life, like sages have told us, like what we resist persists. So if I'm doing something, if I'm taking an action unto not wanting to experience the emotions in my body of my wife leaving me and my daughter being erased by another dude, then that fear was doing me. I wasn't doing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So part of the pathway for me, for a lot of clients I work with on this stuff, is experiencing at an emotional level that fear in our body. Because once we experience it, it's like looking the monster in the eye and we're just with it. We're not putting stories around it. We're not putting meanings around it. It's just like, that's a possibility. No matter how good of a husband I attempt to be, no matter how many date nights I do, the reality is my wife could wake up one day and say, I'm done, and take my daughter and she'd be raised by another dude. And there's nothing I could do about it.
Yeah.
Nothing I could do about it. So once I can experience the spectrum of that, I'm not in resistance to, which allows me to come back to my sovereignty, to be at cause, to then choose what it is I want to choose because I choose it. Not because I'm afraid of this, not because I'm trying to create this other thing in response to this. I'm just being like, no, I know what my desires are. I'm going to do my best to create it, and whatever it is will be, and I will handle it. And in that, this whole new layer of freedom like opened up for me inside the game of marriage specifically.
So good. That's
but
so
that
powerful.
that philosophy translates into every area of our lives, not just our marriage.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Like even in the game of business, it totally translates.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. I love that. I'm like feverishly taking notes.
Awesome. So 2020 was 2020. When I say 2021, 2020 was, it sounds like an amazing year for you. How did you like break through? You mentioned on your website, like you're a recovering perfectionist people pleaser. Like, how did you break through that stuff?
Yeah. So I think I spent so much time living my life that way that I just made a decision. Like,
So
and
good.
I noticed where it was showing up. I became more aware of where those parts of me were showing up. And so I could, again, like you had mentioned, make that decision to go back to what I wanted, the desires that I had. And it's funny because it felt so easy for me last year. It felt really easy. And when I work with my clients on this, because this comes up for them too, the people pleasing, the perfectionism it's such a mask to so many things. So really uncovering where that's coming from. But I know so many people have a harder time moving through some of those things. So, but it's really it's just choice. So I was very intentional with the work that I wanted to do, and created parameters for myself, even from a boundaries perspective.
What were
Right?
some of
Because I
those
didn't
boundaries
want
you had
to.
to create?
Yeah. Oh, like not working my face off. Which when all the kids were home, like that was nearly impossible. But also, and I'm still experimenting with boundaries, right? Because as entrepreneurs, like business and life can feel so in like, totally. Right? Because it's our purpose. So like mixing that with everything, it's hard. So I'm figuring out how to like turn that part of my brain off and like, again, be fully present, or vice versa. So it's learning the practices again to fully be in the moments, and be present to the thoughts that are, again, creating those feelings that are coming up as we're like, again, going through this like identity shifting. So it's the hours. It's also like creating more like intentionality in family time, marriage time, there's business time, and even rules like no phones at the table, if clients call, because my husband's an entrepreneur too, like this is a no client zone.
So good.
Just really being intentional about that. We've got 3 kids and we can be both very busy if we allow it to be that way. And so really just getting nitty gritty with some rules and regulations that we want to implement in the home.
What were some of your biggest lessons you learned last year?
That's a really good question. I think, I broke free of the idea that hustling equals success, because I don't feel like I hustled at all last year. I feel like I don't even know what I did. And I'm like, I had crazy success. And so it was like the validation, right? The validation that I don't need to work harder to have a successful business. I think the other lesson is that in alignment with this hustly, like doing mentality, is like, it all starts with what's going on in the brain. Like if we can't really align like our inside with where we want to go outside, there's going to be just like constant friction. And I think so I got so good at just like like holding space for the vision and just like continuing to take aligned action. And I think that's how everything flowed. So that was a big thing. And then also this idea that, because for so long I was told that you can't have it all. And I operated from that space of, if I'm succeeding in one area of my life, that means I'm sacrificing in another area. And so it was almost like self-sabotage looking back, because that somebody must have said that to me. And it was a belief that I adopted about life. And so that's what I did. It was like, again, like self-sabotage. So, and last year I truly felt like I had it all, but it wasn't because like I had all the external things. It was just because I like felt so, it was like just a sense of calm, even though it was like chaos last year. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if calm is the right word, but really like inside I felt so calm, and like just this sense of freedom in being like such a good mom and such a good wife, and also just like creating this business where I get to make an impact. And like, it was really cool.
Where did your
So I love it.
certainty and all of the uncertainty come from? Was it just back to your decision, or did it come from something else?
Yeah, I think definitely the decision. I think I made the decision that it was like, this was it. I remember when I left corporate, people would say things like, "Oh, well, if it never works out, you're going to have you have a killer resume." I'm like, "What?" Like, it was not it this was it that there was no turning back. I never doubted it. I still don't doubt it. So it was a decision, but I've also always been very resilient. Just in the childhood that I had, and how I was raised, I just have built a lot of resilience. And so in determination, and it played out in the corporate field, just in maybe applied differently. So I think that's where that comes from.
Awesome. What were some of the biggest mistakes you made last year?
Oh, I think probably, oh, I think I sometimes maybe get a little bit too ambitious. That could be my fault. But, and so baby steps like bore me. And so sometimes I overlook like the tiny things that are fine. Like sometimes I just reach too far. So I would say maybe like getting maybe a little distracted, shiny object syndrome. Again, reaching too far when I just need to stay one step in front of me.
So good. How did you cut through the noise starting a business in 2020? More and more people, it seemed like, came online. Like, how did
Mhm.
you really cut through the noise to get heard, to do like digital marketing, which a lot of people have been doing for a decade? So, like, how did you cut through the noise?
Yeah, that's so good. I think for one, I didn't focus on the fact that there was all the noise, right? Like, I think people get so overwhelmed of like, oh my gosh, everybody's doing what I want to do, or there are so many people online, and then they just get stuck in that thought pattern and then never do anything with it. So I think I really put my blinders on, and I just again held space for my vision and just kept going. I also, when we think about showing up online more powerfully, if you want to call it like standing out in the noise, it was a process of really becoming more true to the version of myself that I wanted to show up as and what I knew I had to offer, instead of pulling from what I thought I should be doing, right? Based on what other people were selling in my
So
industry,
good.
or how other people were marketing themselves. Looking back, it was this constant ebb of flow of me like gravitating towards that versus really just like staying in in my own truth and what I knew I had to offer, and really speaking to my people.
How do you know what your truth is? And I love what I'm hearing you say is like, you came home like to your own genuine desires, you listened to that, and then you kind of trusted that, made the decision to go all in. But I think so many people don't know how to come home to listen. How did you
Yeah.
come home to listen in the noise?
Yeah, it was a lot of, I think it's a combination of action. So like I I started out in a completely different niche than where I am now because that's all I knew, and that's where I knew I could start. And so it was just like I took action there. I learned a lot. Like, this is what I didn't want to do. This is what I wanted to do more of. Um, and that gave it, like, continued to just provide this clarity, right? So I think most people wait for the clarity to come to them, and then to take action, but you really have to be willing to take that messy action. I also think it really does require silencing, and that could be not just like meditation, prayer, sitting by yourself, especially if you have, a lot of kids like myself. um Silencing the noise in, like, hearing like what is going on in your brain, but also silencing in, when you sit, for example, even when you sit down to write content, right? Where do you find yourself being pulled? Like, are you creating something because you think you should be? Or again, are you creating something because you saw someone do something similar? Or can you just like sit quietly with yourself and think about what is it that you want to speak about? What are you really passionate about? And for a long time, I didn't think I had passions. I thought my passion was what I was doing in corporate. But it was like these little things that I implemented even day to day, like reading more and noticing like what fired me up, journaling, writing, like brain dumping, just like little things that I started to implement to like discover more about who I was. But again, it requires the silencing of the noise around us and taking those actions to explore and experiment.
What industry did you start out in, and like what industry are you in now?
So went, I guess you could consider it life coaching,
Okay.
because I was still working full time, and I launched this program for working moms to help them establish more harmony and rhythm in their life. And then I loved marketing and selling, so I went into business coaching.
Awesome. Awesome. Did you
Yeah.
find the business coaching easier to sell than the life coaching side of things?
No, no, I didn't. And I had great success with the life coaching. It was very short because, again, like as soon as I got this, I don't know, it was something about the marketing and selling. But I sold it very successfully. And it was because I knew how to speak to my people and their pain points, their desires, and like speak the language, so that it connected with them.
So is that kind of the key to like really like, I don't know, increasing our visibility online, is really learning how to hone in on those desires and the problems of the target market?
Yeah, totally. And I think even, when you think about creating an offer, creating content, even, launching a new platform like podcasting, it's really thinking about the one person on the other side of that and being so specific in your content. And I think so often when we think of like online visibility and followers and fans, it's like people think massive, like group, right? Like, how do I need to speak to this group of people? And what happens when we try to speak to so many people is it becomes more, I call it like mainstream. You're just trying to fit it into all these other different arenas. And so when you really narrow in on like one person, knowing who they are, what they're having a hard, what their challenges are, what they really do desire, and use the language patterns that they use, then you're being seen and heard. And I think people get wrapped up into numbers so much, and so they lose that potency almost in their content.
What advice would you have for those that really want to increase their online visibility this year?
So for sure, less is more. I think there's so many platforms right now, more this year, like like Clubhouse, like, oh my gosh, everybody's like, be on Clubhouse. I'm like, I can't even. But less is more. So if I think so many people are overwhelmed by all the platforms and wondering, so they're like splitting hairs. So if you're really trying to establish your brand and get known, pick one, maybe two platforms that you can go all in on, really learn the algorithms, build your following, build your audience, and really curate that. Like if you've got 100 people that are following you, like know all the 100 people that are following you. And it really starts at that one-to-one. So it's so in contrary to, I think, what most people, like the advice that most people are giving. But I say, like, if you are trying to increase your online visibility, start with one person at a time, build the connection, create like one platform or use one platform, dial in your messaging, and oh my gosh, your brand will just totally soar.
What's your favorite platform right now?
I'm leaning towards Instagram. So I only used Facebook for a really long time. And I started a Facebook group. I love my Facebook group. I pour into them all week. And that's just like the community I love to serve, like a free group. But I'm really starting to also leverage Instagram now. So again, like I'm just now kind of dipping into that second platform and really learn my followers and what they love and the content and things like that. So I'd say I love it over there.
Awesome. What's your favorite type of content to create?
Meaning like long form, short form?
Yeah, or post types, things you like to create. Like for me, I love creating like belief shifting types of posts where we talk about like you think the problem is this, but the real problem is that. Like I like creating those types of posts, those insight types of posts.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm really good at knowing like what my dream client is thinking, believing, and feeling. And right, if we go back to like the general thought pattern, I'm really good at knowing where their head is at and how that's causing them to behave and act. And so I love saying things like that, like, hey, just like, you think you need to be everywhere to increase your online visibility, but here's what you actually need instead. I love creating those little pattern interrupts.
Nice. I know like the industry has been kind of, it seems as if, I know this is a blanket statement, but fuck it. It seems like there's been a lot of high ticket. And here we are in 2021. 2020 was weird. Do you think it's still high ticket or is it more like low ticket and then work our way up?
I love this question. So last year I scaled by only selling high ticket. Awesome. And it worked really well. And I plan to do the same this year and plan to integrate. I'll add, I have a low ticket that I'll use to bring people into my funnel. But I think it all depends on how I think you as, coach, consultant, or entrepreneur like to connect with your audience. How do you like to serve with them? And also what's the idea? Like, could you effectively move them from a low ticket to a high ticket? Right. And because I think you have to learn how to do that, right? Whether that's an email sequence or pushing them to, a promotional event, whatever that looks like. But if you choose to go grab them with high ticket, then we really have to focus on dialing in your messaging and your marketing so that it's attracting that premium audience that will pay high ticket. So I think it's a really good question. It'll be fun to see how people are going to shift a little bit this year after 2020. But I think it's all going to depend on how each entrepreneur really loves to connect with their audience and really their strong suits.
Awesome. And if you could like give yourself some wisdom to help, like if you go back in time and give yourself wisdom to collapse some time and get results faster, what would you tell her?
Oh, that's a good one. I think I would. I would say. Sometimes you have to slow down to speed up.
So good. So good. So good. And if people want to connect with you, maybe they want to learn how to increase their visibility or whatnot, where can they learn more about you? Where can they connect with you?
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at Kinsey Makis, or you can find me on Facebook too and hang out in our free Facebook group. It's called Marketing and Launch Strategies for Coaches and Consultants.
Awesome. Well, Kinsey, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This was such a fun conversation.
Well, there you have it, my friend, Kenzie Makis. I really hope you enjoyed this conversation. I hope her vulnerability helped you to see some blind spots within yourself. And I also hope it gave you some insights to help you increase your visibility online. So that's all I have for this episode of the Anthony John Weeks podcast. If you know someone who needs to hear this episode, please send it to them over in their DMs, screenshot it, share it on social media, send them email, text messages, whatever you have to do to get this episode into their ear holes. And also, please keep the 5-star reviews coming over on iTunes, because that's really what helps get this show found by more people. And I pour a lot of time and energy every single week into this podcast. So it's a way for you to give back to me if you go over to iTunes, leave a review. So thank you so much for being here. Until next time, my friend, I'm out. Peace.
Well, that's all I've got for this episode of the Anthony John Amyx podcast, but we have plenty more to help you become unstoppable in life and business. So head on over to ajamyx.com for exclusive resources, information, and tools to help you break through to a new level of freedom, purpose, and success. I look forward to having you back for the next episode. Bye for now.